Morning, my friends. Afternoon, actually. This is the Fat Man, Rick, coming at you with the conversation that's been popped up. There's a lot. First off, there's a lot of good stuff on the video response channel the last week. It's been spectacular, to be honest. You know, been a lonely stretch through the winter, and a handful of us waving our so-called torches around. Basically having free reign of babbling and bombastically thumping our chests and saying our 2 cents worth, and that's an awesome thing to see so much extra and new people coming on the channel and old people coming, older members of the channel, not referring to old people, you know, not trying to get there, because I fit in that category, gosh darn it. Anyway, Rulzs Lawyers, Rules Doctor, a Rules Advocate, a Rules Advisor, all good terms. You know, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Well, I'm going to take things from the perspective of the Rules Lawyer or the Rules Advocate. I think pretty much anybody who's gained any significant amount of time, especially a game master, is by default a rules lawyer or a rules advocate in their own right. This comes from gobs of hours spent mediating, running, designing, what have you, a game. Whether it's this campaign or that campaign or this game system or that game system, it doesn't matter. And so when we jumped to the other's chair on the other side of the table where we take a seat as a player, it's a bit tough sometimes, I think, to divorce ourselves from that role that we're used to always finding ourselves in, where in some aspects, as Angel put out, that, you know, a good GM that should know their stuff. Well, that's true. And if we know our stuff, it's because we made an effort to read the material and reread it and to understand it in a method that works for us within the framework that's provided by the game itself. Now, interpreting rules is another animal altogether, because one person can view something as one thing and another person can view something as meaning something else. The rules, while seemingly clear-cut, are not always so. There's always some gray area fluctuating in between, and you can't be for sure exactly, you know, where that might fall in depending on the individual. So if we are a rules doctor or rules advocate and we're sitting in on a game for somebody else who is in the hot seat, trying to refrain from giving helpful and useful advice at every opportunity can be a bit of a challenge for some people. I can be one of those people. It is something that, you know, I try to work on when it happens, and I don't always succeed at it. It's never intentional, and I've found myself on more than one occasion having to apologize after the fact that I should not have brought my knowledge to the forefront, out of game knowledge in some cases people would like to call it, and there's a reason why we call it out of game knowledge, right? It's acting on something the character shouldn't have knowledge of, or an understanding how the world around them functions from a mechanics point of view. The fact is, it's not always a bad thing. A lot of times it's a good thing. I mean, the truth is, as a GM myself, I'm not going to sit here and say that I have mastered every version of a game that exists, that I understand 100% of everything in there, or that I can, at the snap of a finger, recall that information and apply it appropriately in a given situation when it crops up, especially on these really heavy game rules heavy game systems. These are the systems that have a variety of alternate possible outcomes for some sets of rules. or they have specialty rules that circumvent or supersede the standard rule because we're doing something that's more detail-oriented or more goal-oriented or specific to an environment or what have you. And they trump the generic general rules that come in the standard version. In fact, we all always have a grip on that isn't unfair. Another issue as a GM and as a would-be rules advocate that comes up in my case and some other of my friends' cases is that we have played so many different versions of rules. I mean, we're on 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, which in truth is 7th or 8th edition if you really want to be technical about it. Because if you go back to the very beginning, white book, red book, blue book, and then the numbered versions of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So, we have 5th edition of AD&D, but we have at least 3 additional, prequels to the AD&D system. So, if you work your way up through these, it's not uncommon for you to muddle up the rules you're thinking about. If we just got, we spent the last decade, like I have, running games in 3.5, you dabbled in 4.0 very briefly, not enough to become competent in all the rule changes, and then progressed to 5.0. It's very hard to not find myself referring to 3.5 rules because I played them that way for such a long period of time. That's always been my go-to for the past, 15, 20 years. So sometimes it takes somebody else going, I don't think it works out that way there, Rick. I think might need to relook up that thing and maybe polish up the knowledge on that particular subject. So, as Tim says, it's all about timing, right? Social diplomacy, if you will. We want to share this information that's sometimes just squealing and screaming inside our heads, bouncing around, grabbing the rungs and shaking the eardrums and bellowing at the back of the eye going, no, it's this way, you boob, it's this way. Not that way. And you find yourself it's like having ants in the pants or having that extra cash in your pocket. You just burning a hole through your pocket. You just got to buy that next great, thing, game related or not. And it's so hard to contain ourselves in the diplomatic form because not everybody is laid back and not everybody can divorce themselves from one aspect of the game for the other. So if you are commonly a player and rarely a GM, you don't put yourself in the GM's shoes or seat enough to understand all the nuances or pressures or seemingly not always clear obstacles that the game master will have a tendency to come up with on their own or put in front of themselves or to stumble or struggle with or whatever to produce a very good and fun afternoon or evening. And having somebody start throwing rules at them can trip them up. At the same time, there are situations, and let's call it the cliffhanger for the moment. Every good, I don't want to say session, but every good campaign should have a cliffhanger or two. Ideally, if you have a long session, if you can end that session at a cliffhanger, it's kind of like a TV series or movies where you leave them wanting more. They want to know what happened to Bebob who fell off the cliff. Well, tune in next session. Come in next week and we will see, did he survive the fall or did the Valkyries get him? I'm just saying, right? Okay. So, having that cliffhanger moment where perhaps a misjudge of the rules could be very crucial to the success or failure of that particular section of that cliffhanger. It can be detrimental to the campaign group, to the players as a whole, and having somebody hold up a flag and go, or a timeout for a moment, and say, wait, I don't think that this is being adjudicated properly, and I don't want to risk the possibility of true failure because somehow or another that extra +1 matters. And as you well know, they do matter, hence the point of having +1s and -1s and so on and so forth, or +10s and -10s in the percentile system, as some people love to hate so much, or hate to love so much, I guess. It's a matter of perspective. I don't know. So, is it good? Is it bad? Of course, it's always into the individual perspective. And always, as Tim says, be polite. If you got to bring it up, try to find a good moment to do so. Unless you're, like I said, you're at this critical, crucial junction where everything hangs on the balance of a handful of roles and a handful of actions based on the players. Now, can we take a timeout? Can we have that moment? Can we, if necessary, and this I borrowed this term, taking a mulligan, in my own campaign worlds, and I've tried to let the players know that at the beginning of a session or the beginning of a campaign, when we have session 0, something that I like to remind them that if you think something went wrong, and of course it's always going to be something that went wrong. Things that go right, everybody kind of will look sideways to each other and grin or shrug or seek not to bring up the fact that maybe if you'd have used the rules the way they were meant to be, well, Bebop would have still fallen off the cliff instead of being saved by a passing eagle or something. I'm just pointing that out, right? The obvious things here is usually when things are going south and things are not going well, or that the rules doctors or advocates start to chime in. Not always, but it is that way. So if it is a crucial moment, I let my players know after the fact, we can have a mulligan. We can stop, have that discussion if necessary, hopefully not allowing it to bog down the entire session, or worse, develop into something that's going to be detrimental to the continuation of the group, in the campaign at all, because sometimes these things can be too much for people and end up having a disagreement turning into an argument. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants any hard feelings or sore feelings or any of that sort of thing, mostly anyway. I won't argue that there's that one type of player that seems to thrive on agitating somebody somehow, some way. And if they can use the rules to do so, they do so. I don't ever like to consider myself that player, but there were times when I was younger, if I got bored, maybe perhaps I could start causing problems. And I've learned the value of how that doesn't work out well in the long run, and it's not healthy for the game system as a whole. So, we're back to that, being the game's advocate. I personally think that there are plenty of opportunities and reasons and times and when this sort of thing is very important to do. It's just my 2 cents, 5 cents worth. From a lonely highway in the middle of Iowa, heading to the great William Penn University, this is the Fat Man saying, be nice. Oh, wait, let's add an amendum here. It just come to mind. When we talk about just a little bit, just a hair, about this social, psychiatric, or not psychotic, where this is, the thing that Tim called it, and I'm calling it everything but that, where we all have this thing together that we work on in our heads. I had to take some anger management classes some years back. I wasn't really an angry person, but I really got angry or annoyed by the damn class itself. That's neither here nor there. But I have to admit, I learned a few important things. Back in the day when I was growing up, We used to have this thing, well, if you point one finger at somebody, you point your finger at somebody about something, you usually got 3 other fingers and pointing at yourself and maybe a thumb pointing off into the next guy over who's looking at you with an odd look in his eye because you're pointing a thumb at him. In anger management, they say when you're talking to people, especially when you're upset about a situation, to remember to refrain from using the word you. You did this, you don't understand, you have not read the rules, you cannot be a good blah, 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 you. And it's rough, it's tough to phrase a conversation, admittedly when you're upset or annoyed or angry or confused, without using the term you. Because you is a personal attack on somebody. That's how it's defined or it's viewed in anger management, that you are singling an individual out because of whatever reason. Even if that individual truly is the problem or has instigated the problem or is continuing to feed the problem and applying directly to them with that term is not exactly healthy or helpful to the cause. Oddly enough, there was a debate whether or not addressing the individual by their given name wasn't the same thing as pointing a finger at them or calling them, you did this, you did that, you. You guys, plenty of you sociologists or psychiatrists, there's that word I was trying to figure out earlier, psychiatry, what have you, would understand or may not understand or may choose to point fingers back at me and say, you have no idea what you're talking about. But I have discovered through trial and error and years of attempts to better myself that when I address a given problem at a table, I try to generalize wherever possible. I try to eliminate the need to personalize or turn this into an intimate moment between the rules advocate and the person being judged. We are judging you as lacking in some way. I am judging you. You! Yeah, that's right, you. No. I would think like, it's just possible. Maybe I don't understand your, see how hard it is? You already want to put the word you in there. Now, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's my misunderstanding of how the rules should be applied in this kind of situation. But I have to wonder, perhaps, if they were misapplied or misunderstood at this particular point. Now, as it was be brought up by one or two or more people, whether verbally or in text as a comment on the video, or to themselves or to the world in general where I don't hear it, somebody's going to go and say, what does it all matter? Why are you so focused? And I think Tim addresses a little bit of this too. And this is all referring to Lee Patterson's video blog on the topic of Rulzs Lawyers. And I agreed with Tim when he said, and I agree a lot with what Lee said. I understand what Lee's frustration and feelings are on the subject. Trust me, this is a topic, as any game master worth their salt has had to deal with or cope with at least a few dozen times in their career as a game master. Unless you're fairly new at the game and you got a very good group, very, very special group, because you always find yourself with that rules advocate, rules lawyer somewhere. And sometimes you forget to look in the mirror because more often than not, that rules advocate is you. Oh, there we are, that word we should not use. But is it or is it not true? That is another question for another day. Thank you. Until next time.